Hello, I'm Richard Raffan. This is going to be the second of the Four Ways video in which Mike Peace, Tomislav Tomašić and Sam Angelo and myself are going to work on the same project. This month Mike decided that we would do a 9 by 3 inch wide rim dish. So I have this blank here which is actually 9 by about 3.5, 3 3/4, but it's got a number of splits and so on, so I think I'll be lucky to finish even as a 9 by 3, but we'll see what happens. So here we go. I've already drilled a hole in the middle of the blank. I don't need all that screw, I'll just reduce it to about 1/2 inch, 15 millimeters, and I'll let the way through the work. Lathe goes back to near zero, just so it's running, I don't know, a couple of hundred RPM at the most. Feed it on. Now this is supposed to be, well, the block was marked Chinese elm, which I don't think it is. My money at the moment is on Tasmanian blackwood, but we'll see. I hope I know what it is when I get into it. First thing to do is going to be to get rid of all the bits I don't want. This is going to be a wide rimmed, an open bowl with a wide rim. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of everything I don't want, which is the bark, and the little splits which are in here will probably come off as well. So I like to have things which are split free. There is a great big one all the way up there which doesn't look very good, but we'll see what happens in a couple of minutes. So 1/2 inch spindle gouge and winding it up until the bowl just starts to rattle a bit, and drop it back a few revs. Just using just to the left of the tip of the tool. This is hard and it's dry. So. Still quite a bit of bark to go. Let's see if we can lever it off. No, it doesn't want to come. So I'm just going to work down to this shoulder to start with, and down to where the bottom of the bark is, which I can mark. Almost gone. I just saw the last bit of bark fly off there, or almost the last bit. So still a little split just up in there, and just get the top bit done. Just using just to the right of the nose of the tool, bevel's rubbing, so it's a shear cut. Well, bevel almost rubbing. There are a few ridges, and that always means the bevel wasn't. Right, the first, well, it's not entirely the first, I knew there was a bit of it there. There's a split just there, which unfortunately goes into there. So I'd really like to get rid of that. And most of them seem to have gone down there, so there's another one up here, which is, that's just a not such a little bit of a split, and it's right on the end grain, which is a real pity. So I'll just take that down a little bit more. But I'll get rid of the primary split first. So that's just using the wing of the tool, pushing it in. There's a split coming from the pith, which is where you'd expect a split. That one is still just about there, so I'm going to mark where that one is on the face, and I can mark it down here as well, so I know where to find it a bit later. The top marker's almost gone, just needs off another little kind of 2 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch. That should do it. And I need to take off a little bit more of this one, and I can see it doesn't go down to there, but I can see a little bit up at the top. So mark that with the pencil. Nowhere to look. That's gone, so that's all good. Now next thing is to start to shape the bottom, so that's going to be my rim up here, and this will be the base. Now we'll just rough it out at first, and because the whole blank is balanced a bit better, I can have a few more revs. I'm now running at something people always want to know, running about 1100. So hand on the rest, using the left wing just to take the bottom, screw the bottom up. Just gets the rim smooth, and then I can take a shear cut back to the middle. Wing of the tool. If you bring the tool in straight up and do that, there will be a big catch. Right, so that's all looking pretty good. Right, so now start to rough out a shape. So what I have in mind is a fairly practical little bowl. Could be used for fruit or pasta, something like that. So don't want too thin a base. I mean too small a base, don't I? Not thin. Just stop at this stage and see if there are any splits hanging around, which there are up on the bark, and so I'll mark where the outer parts of that, and also down there. That's it. This is smelling like acacia melanoxylon. I would say it's some kind of acacia anyway. So first thing is actually just to get rid of just that split. Then I can see what I've got left. gone. Right, so now I can make my shape out of this lot, and next thing is to get some calipers, which I have preset. And I'll just try this. This is one I can use, trying to keep out of the way of the camera. Just give me a rough idea where it is. Just check that, blocking the camera, and that is where I need it. So that means I can have a small foot and take this straight out of the chuck finished. Won't make the foot absolutely right just yet, I just cut straight in. Still with the 1/2 inch spindle gouge. Lining the bevel up here, so I go straight in, just pivot the tool into the wood. I'll stay just proud of that for the moment. Now, beginning to think about the shape I'm going to want, and I failed to get out the right gouge for it. So I'm using a 3/8 deep fluted bowl gouge. It's got an asymmetric grind with a pretty steep right wing, and that is so that I can get in comfortably at that angle. If I had a longer bevel, the tool would be just too far around to be comfortable. And the rest is dropped a little bit so that the wood's definitely coming down onto the edge. I'm going to be using just to the right of the nose of the tool. So I know where I want to go, which is from here and to end up there, and I have to do is just try and go there in one smooth movement. Cross that little gap. And that will do. Let's see what it looks like. Definitely blackwood, Tasmanian blackwood, or we call it Sally wattle if it was grown locally. So that would be, yes, that'll be all right. And the only possibility I have here is it might split on the end grain with heat when I'm sanding, but so I've got to be very careful with that. Now, coming up on the little rim here, I'm going to do that initially with a scrape. Or will I? No, I'll do it with the spindle gouge first, just with the wing of the tool. Hand on the rest and just squeeze the tool in, pitched up. So I'm just using the fullness of the curve to do the shear scrape there. I think of it as a kind of power squeeze. Could be just a little more curves in there, that's it. Now that leaves me a little ridge just there, and when I'm looking from the side, it's going to be nice if that's slightly undercut in that corner. So there's a teeny bit of a shadow line. That'll be good. When I look at this now, there's a little bit of a lump there, so this is going to get taken off with a scraper. Oops, and it doesn't like doing it flat, so I'm going to tilt it up and shear scrape better. can feel that that's not a good cut into the corner. And that just doesn't really want to take much dust, and I'll ground this tool up, but anyway, I'm just going to hone the tip. Better shaving. Around the foot, I'll do the bottom first, and then come back and do the side. Rest up a fraction so this surface is tilted down, so what they call the negative rake, the angle between the top of the tool and the surface I'm cutting is less than 90 degrees. And you do not need a negative rake scraper to do that. All you have to do is raise the tool handle, maybe raise the rest first and then the tool handle. And just using the corner here, a little bit of decoration. Now to the side, this is the 3/8 spindle gouge. Just going to pivot the edge into the wood. Tool's pretty well on its side. Little bit of long splinter stuff came off there, off the long grain. And then get the bevel riding, tool's right on its side, and take a little shear cut back into the top of the foot. I'm going to round this foot over for the moment, so the wing of the tool, left wing, just tool's right on its side, just stroke that edge. Right, and sand all that. Starting with 120. Okay, so without a little bit of initial bit of effort, I can just see if the grain's going to pick up at all. Feels a little bit kind of ingrainy there, which is what it is, and a bit there, but otherwise that looks as though it's going to sound okay. So I'm not going to shoot all that. We'll come back when I'm ready for polishing. So that was probably about 4 minutes sanding with power, and down to 240 grit, which I think is quite fine enough on a utilitarian piece. Now my little oil bowl, which was the end grain bowl, done in the little end grain bowl video, and some board linseed oil. Which gets slopped on, and as I feared, there was a micro splitting on a bit of the end grain. Very difficult to see, but just must have built up a little bit too much heat, and that just confirms in my mind that this is Sally Wattle, which is very common that it does that when it's fairly pale like this. And on top of that, I'm going to put in some beeswax. This is a lump of pure beeswax. Build up the sticky layer, and that's going to melt in with the with the linseed. This is the sock on its last days, I think. It's very thick with wax now, so. And plenty of pressure to get everything melting. And yes, this sock is very full of wax now, so I need another bit. And that's what most of my stuff gets. That's what the bowls get. So that's come up quite nicely. Definitely not elm. Right, so we'll turn this round. People always think that the chucks won't hold, and it's all you can do sometimes to get these things off. I'll get a longer bar into the. I was not prepared for this on this occasion. Oh dear, dear, dear. That's it at last. It might be me getting weak in my old age too, of course. I'll just check that you can see all that. Right, next thing to do is to get off the surplus, and I'll do that with the half-inch bowl gouge. It's half-inch flute, I think. I know people will be asking, or Americans will be asking. It is. Oh, it's a 3/8 flute and a looks like 5/8 overall, somewhere around there. Just using the nose of the tool there. A lot of the power of this cut is actually coming from my hip, which is nudging the end of the handle around, and so the tool's really just pivoting on the rest. Chip flying off. Now next thing is to get it pretty well flat so I can drill a depth hole accurately. Little starter hole, 3/8 spindle gouge for the depth drill. I need to go down just past that mark. This is is a fairly new depth drill and it could do with a few more marks on it. What this one will have very shortly. Right, the half-inch bowl gouge. What is sold as a half-inch bowl gouge? Again, this is asymmetrically ground. It's got a fairly short right wing, which means as I roll it round, I get a pretty nice shaving coming off that wing. And it just seems to take off a bit more using that than if it's swept back. To get to the bottom of the hole as quickly as possible so I know where all the other cuts are directed. I also need a bit more light in there because while you can probably see, I can't. Have to remember this is a wide rimmed bowl and I don't often make these, so just mark the projection of the curve up the outside. So if I went in at that point I'd probably have a problem. Just take that off and start again. And there, so I'll probably I need to know where the outside is rather than where I should perhaps go. The tool at this point is pretty well horizontal. Now I drop the handle a little bit and then bring it up again, so I go in a big loop in towards the center. Right, down to the bottom. Now next thing is going to be to get the wall thickness down from about there. I never want an even wall thickness. I like to have the wall thinning out about halfway down because I just feel there's better balance between the rim and the base. So I aim to get down most of the way down to about there, and then I can do across the bottom of the scraper. So again, I feel I have more control over the shape that way. And just see how we're going for shape. So these calipers, there's a ring just here which they work like that, and then it's just a question of letting this ring come up to this point, and that tells me, then I can open them up, pull them out and see how thick I am, which is about, must be close on 3/8 of an inch, that, about 9 millimeters. Down to the bottom By the time I sweep that curve round, that's going to be more than thin enough. Now I can start to do the rim up here. I can do this with the 3/8 bowl gouge 3/8. I suppose you'd probably be calling a quarter. It's yeah, just about 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 an inch diameter, the whole bar. Never want the rim too thin, because the long grain on the two sides can split lengthways, especially if there's this heavy stuff in the bowl. Right, so that's going to be about right, and then I want to just cut it underneath a little bit by the rim, so it's got a better kind of definition. Let me get a bit of a shadow line. I could even cut right up underneath it, but I think I'll just try and cut back this time. It's really quite difficult to see that in the light I've got, so I'm going to just put a bit of pencil there so I know where it is. Right, tool's right on its side. That was not a good start. I've got ridges which I can see over on the other side. I've lost that nice curve I had, and that's mostly because I'm not leaning right over, which I would be normally, but then I block the camera. So a little whipping sound in there, which is something I'd rather not hear. I hope it's a knot, but sometimes it can just be a bit of tough grain or something. Yeah, it's the end grain's really picking up quite badly there. That's sandable, but given the thing's likely to heat crack, I don't want to put too much effort into sanding, because that'll just split the crack the wood. So what I'm going to have a go at is cutting the entry cut just to get past that area with the 3/8 spindle gouge. Starts right on its side, roll it once I'm in. Now this time I'm really not too worried about little grooves. I'm more anxious to cut the end grain cleanly, because little grooves will sand away, whereas pulled out end grain won't, or not easily anyway. Right, given this wood, I'm going to hone this edge. It was working just with a good kind of burr, but this will be better. Right, fingers around the outside to just support the wood, and the thumbs act as a movable fulcrum. And no pressure against the wood. You just want the wood coming to the tool, hold the edge in the right place so it just takes off a minimal amount as it comes past. Tool tilted down a little bit. Doesn't need to be, because I'm working on a curve. So I could even stick it up a bit there and I wouldn't have a catch. Initially anyway. Now coming around the inside, I can also turn that tool up, just a little shear scrape. Not a comfortable thing to do. I can hear a little nicking sounds in there. much better across the grain, across the long grain. Wee bit careless there, just coming off the bottom. That's given me a lump, just where that finger is, just there. Oh, and I can hear it whipping. Another good sign. Let's have another look. Oh, that could be worse. Good. Now that actually is quite thick, so I'm just going to take the bowl off and measure the depth right in the middle. So this is something which again is useful to know how to do, because not many of us have a kind of servant in the workshop to hold bowls so you can have a look. That's how much I've got in the bottom, so I can take away half of that. Well, maybe not a half, there's a slight lump, but when I'm doing this kind of thing I go down with a take down this tool. This is a 1-inch version of what I've just been using. I just want to get down to the right kind of depth. That's actually got a better edge on it, so we'll stick with that. And I'm going to come back to the bowl gouge, the big one, so I can go from about here down across that lot. Pick up an inside edge. That really doesn't want to cut, so just going away to grind that. So that was 5 seconds for the wheel to build up speed and probably 4 seconds grinding, sharpening. And that makes all the difference. So as always, if you think the tool could be a bit sharper, go to the grinder. And I'll get rid of the central lump. Still a shade, feels a bit thick in there. Well, barely, but I'll take a little bit more out. sand if it's down to about probably 5 millimeters or so across the bottom. It'll be fine. So this gets power sanded, and I start off with a 120 grit, and that should take care of any little ridges, not that there are too many. That's looking pretty good, well, except up in just in there, but power will take care of that. Sanding it all, especially with the power, you want to concentrate on one surface and then come in and do the other, otherwise you tend to lose the detail. Right, so that's not looking crash hot in there. That could do with another disc. And so with something like that I can lock the spindle and then just work on that little bit. Something in there still. So I'm trying to cut, taking the wheel spinning this way, so as it comes into the oncoming wood, it should be a more aggressive cut. And it also helps develop the curve. What you do have to watch is that if you concentrate too much in the center, you'll get a pit in the middle. Whereas if you're hand sanding, it's generally a bump which develops. Just a teeny bit more there again. Right, that's taken care of that now, so we'll, there's a little bit up here, just looks a bit kind of, it's smooth, but it just doesn't look quite right, so I need to sand with the wheel coming off the rim, so to speak. And then I'll do that, and then I'll finish it off and not bore you with the details. So that's the sanding done, finished off with the rotary sander at 240 grit, and on goes the oil. Now there were a few little micro cracks on the end grain opened up, particularly there, but I know from previous experience you get the oil into those, and as the wood cools down the cracks split up and you don't see them. But if they do pop up, then just give them a fine sanding, and that kind of closes them all up again. But I don't see those as a long-term problem. And this time we'll just apply the sock with its oil. Right, and that's that. It feels quite light. Good. It looks like blackwood, feels like blackwood, works like not very good blackwood. Yes, came out quite nicely. And if I wanted to take the foot off, which I don't, I could re-chuck that over some sort of thing, jam basically between centres, and just nick the foot off. But you'll see me doing that in quite a few other videos. So that's that little one. So when I say between centres, what I'm going to be using is this piece of non-slip cloth glued to some MDF, which then goes on a chuck. If you're wondering what the white is, that's the remnants of a bit of paper which stuck to the glue, and yeah. I don't often use glue, and I was trying to protect my workbench. Anyway, paper has ended up in there. It doesn't look very nice, but it works. So this is now going to go over here and kind of line it up by eye, and then so as not to have a spike, a hole in the bottom, I've got the little bit of MDF disc, which won't go forward because the rest's in the way. Looks pretty good. So I can run this about 12-1400 quite happily. And I'm going to take the foot away with the left wing of the 1/2 inch bolt gouge, just a shear straight. Oops. Not quite as sharp as I would like, so I'm just going to hone the edge. I don't normally hone gouges unless I'm going to shear scrape with them. I don't really like, for shear cutting, I don't like the little secondary bevel I get when honing. And it still doesn't want to cut, so I'm just going to use something else. So this is the 3/8. I'd forgotten, this wood is not that nice to work. Right, so that's come off, and as you do this you get a little bit of kind of eccentricity, but that doesn't matter because it all sands in quite happily, one bit to another. So 180 grits. Sure that's doing the job. Yep. And you're going to get a few little kind of scratches up into the polished surface. going to finish that off with a rotary sander, so I've got 240 grits. Might as well do the whole lot while I'm at it. Just put wax on this, I think that should do it. Build up a sticky layer. And then I've got the waxy sock. There's a lot of wax in this. It's a question of holding the sock firm enough. It's a question of holding the sock firm enough that the wax can melt in, and then once you've got the heat, and you can kind of float it up the side of the bowl. So this is a very useful technique to have, because putting something between centers means that when you're making the bowl initially, instead of gripping inside a recess, expanding the jaws, you can have a much better grip holding on a larger diameter, and then if you don't want the foot, you just take it away this way. It's really quite easy. And before the modern trucks came along, this was the way we always did it. So we'll see how that looks. Right. Well, I think that's an improvement.